Welcome to the Nebraska Department of Education's Making It Stick Professional Development webinar series. I'm Dr. Michael Quinn, and I'll be your host for Module 5, Grab the R.A.F.T. Wondering what R.A.F.T stands for? Role, Audience, Format, and Topic. Interested? Great. The R.A.F.T webinar will take 35 minutes. Throughout this module, we built in some learner engagement activities to ensure your comprehension. When you see the pencil icon, you'll be asked to pause, reflect, engage, and write in your viewing guide. Feel free to stop, start, and rewind as needed. After you complete the module, we'll ask you a few questions to see if we've helped you meet the lesson's objectives. Let's get started. Here's our umbrella question for today. How can writing be taught and used in a content area classroom, whether or not you are a writing teacher? Let's begin by looking at our objectives. Because we always want to reflect and improve upon our own processes, we'll explore the following strategies. First, we will review the concept and practice of backward design. Next, we will review the principles of the R.A.F.T activity. Then, we will examine different ways to approach R.A.F.T activities in content area classrooms. After that, we will review rubrics and end goals for R.A.F.T activities. Finally, we will plan for R.A.F.T activities in your classroom. After this webinar, we know you'll be able to define, recognize, and implement more flexible assessments like R.A.F.Ts, and test out new ways to assess students in your classroom practice. R.A.F.T stands for Role, Audience, Format, Topic. More on role, audience, format, and topic later in the webinar. School can sometimes feel like a chore for students. Skills and activities that make perfect sense to teachers can seem random to students. How can we remedy the situation and gain student buy-in? One possible remedy is backward design. Backward design ensures that we know where we're going. If you asked any teacher if they knew why they were teaching what they were teaching, or why they are doing that in a particular way, they would say, "Of course." But in our first webinar, we looked at the difference between being consciously competent and unconsciously incompetent. While all of us think that we're at the top of the heap, in our deepest, darkest moments, we might have to admit that there have been some lessons that were less than stellar, and others that didn't go off as well as we'd hoped, that we didn't have enough time to plan for, or that we felt scattered, random, or like we were assigning busy work. When we reflect on those moments, it's clear that if we just had a better map to follow that day, we'll help students head in the right direction and be able to lead them on a fulfilling educational journey, an enjoyable journey for both the students and us. Returning to the linguistic roots of curriculum reveals its wisdom and suggests a solution to help our students really get it. The Latin meaning contains a lovely metaphor for what we do and shows that perhaps we might benefit from thinking of a curriculum as the pathway toward a specific educational destination. As an educator, that means we begin with that destination in mind as we set our curriculum, the course for our students to run. As Stephen Covey stated, to begin with the end in mind means to start with a clear understanding of your destination. As educators, that helps us target our destination as we plan each step of the journey to make sure that we all end up at the desired destination. Backward design has always been popular with educators, where educators start with goals, create assessments, and then write lesson plans. Grant Wiggins and Jay McTeague, the founding fathers of understanding by design, also liken the process to using a roadmap. Tackling backward design is very involved. Take a look. We could spend an entire webinar working on the entire process. But for today, we'll break down the 3 stages of backward design. The backward design model centers on the idea that the design process begins by identifying the results we want to see. That's what we want our students to know and be able to do. Then we work backwards to develop our instructional plan rather than following the traditional approach, which is to define what topics need to be covered over how many classes. On the screen, you can see summaries of the 3 stages. Let's continue by seeing how backward design connects to the RAFT strategy. In Part 2, we'll explore RAFT's uses and possibilities. Depending on your needs, you can bend the RAFT to your will and use RAFT as a pre-reading or a pre-writing strategy, or a post-reading or post-unit assessment, or as a variety of formative and summative assessments. RAFT carries a lot of benefits, both holistic and targeted, and RAFT is a great way for the students to find out that thinking and working hard can be a lot of fun. Either by yourself or in a group, let's take some time to reflect on your own experience as a teacher. Consider the following questions. When you pick up a nonfiction book in your field, how do you read it? Biography, peer-reviewed journal, or informational text? Do you read the book the same way you would read a play, or poetry, or Stephen King? Danielle Steele? Unless you're an English teacher, you probably approach texts in your content field differently than poetry or fiction. Please pause the video for a moment and jot down your answers to the questions in your viewing guide. Press play when you're ready to resume. As we think about content area literacy, consider the questions on the screen. How do you read text differently if you're a historian? How do you write differently if you're a scientist? Either by yourself or in a group, let's take some time to reflect on your own experience as a teacher. Imagine you have a history or science textbook, or a textbook related to your content area in front of you. Consider the following questions. Who wrote the textbook? For whom did the author write the book? In general, what is the format in which our textbook was written? What is the topic of the book you're imagining? Please pause the video for a moment and write down your answers to the questions in your viewing guide. Press play when you're ready to resume. Let's take a look at some sample answers to those questions using an imaginary American government textbook. Authorities and experts most likely wrote the textbook. The primary audience was most likely textbook adoption committees, administrators, teachers, and students. The format is an informational text with units, chapters, headings, subheadings, charts, graphs, images. The various sections of the text could be organized as compare-contrast, cause-effect, static-dynamic, or any combination of formats. I'm imagining a chronological presentation of the history of the American government. What are you imagining? What are the chances that your students will have different answers? Where might your answers have differed and why? Do you think your students will be able to answer questions 2 and 3? Do you think your students have ever thought about where their text comes from? Have you? How many texts in your book do you think would qualify as being an essay? One of the challenges to teaching writing is that we learn how to do it best by immersing ourselves in examples of good writing, then practicing. This means that we should have the students reading lots of excellent essays all the time. Essays like this. Here's an essay. And another. and another, and another. Dave Barry. But as much fun as it is to read a modest proposal or a Dave Barry column, what do we have students do with text like that? They probably won't have a reason to write quite as formally as Jonathan Swift, or as goofily as Dave Barry for that matter. That doesn't mean they shouldn't read the text, and it doesn't mean they shouldn't think, and think critically, about every piece of writing that they read in every single class, whether it's an artful satire, important social commentary, or goofball humor. There's always something to be gained from an application of critical thinking. Critical thinking about things like, who wrote it? For whom were they writing it? Why did they choose to write a book, brochure, letter, diary, etc.? For what purpose did they choose to write on that subject in that format? At heart, that is the essence of rhetoric. We all love acronyms, right? Especially like here with RAFT. They're real words and involve a real metaphor. Role, audience, format, topic. RAFT has its own special commutative property. You can use RAFT as a writing strategy or as a pre-reading strategy, as we did with the preview of our imaginary textbook. You can use our handy acronym RAFT as a map to get you where you need to go. The journey involves remembering the basics that students need to look at when previewing a text. But as useful as the RAFT is as a reading strategy, RAFT was originally intended to be a writing strategy. Often, writing strategies either water down instruction or water down expectations. RAFT does the opposite and firms up learner expectations. RAFT allows you to use high-level content that you can pitch at students' zone of proximal development, true differentiation. The level of content mastery is still the same level of mastery across the board. But how students provide that to you can vary wildly. In Part 3, we'll find out how RAFT works. RAFT challenges students to write to an audience, imaginary or real, other than their teacher and from a perspective, imaginary or real, other than their own. Ideally, our students see us as the most inspirational teacher they've ever had, and in turn, our students hand in inspired writing every time. But too often, the work we assign is less than inspirational. Our writing assignments may appear to have an arbitrary topic, an arbitrary prompt, an arbitrary purpose, and as a result, receive an arbitrary grade. If all we want is for students to regurgitate the basics of what's given, then business as usual is fine. We need to be passionate about our subject area content. Yes, it matters to us whether the students go beyond the content and take that knowledge with them as they go through life. When we RAFT a document before reading, it's like letting them see the man behind the curtain. In writing, the RAFT strategy pulls away the veil and allows students to see the true nature of the activity and the why. When we were in school, a standard U.S. history class assessment, once everyone got past the multiple choice questions, often looked something like this. What can you infer about the teacher? The teacher didn't want to spend too much time on grading. The teacher was mostly looking for memorized facts. The teacher didn't much care about the student's writing as a skill. Looking at the answers, what can you infer about the student's perception of the class? The student knew the teacher had a sense of humor. When the teacher asked, "Name 3," the student knew he didn't mean as part of a complete sentence. And one more thing will become clear in the short answer item. The student knew that the teacher wanted to see that they had been paying attention in class, and especially that they had been listening to his viewpoint so they could hand it back to him. But what if, during her homework research for class, the student had found a reference to airplanes being the most important factor in the outcome of the war? She disagrees with her teacher if she was going to answer honestly. Should she risk that? Would you have? Let's use the same topic area, but adjust the topic as though the teacher had chosen to assign a RAFT assessment rather than the traditional multiple choice short answer test. Here we have an essential question and an enduring understanding. You'll see that the chart is organized with RAFT elements in columns. Students can pick one from each column. But there's flexibility here too. What if you had a student who wrote for the school newspaper? Encourage her to use the journalist role. What if you have a student you know who is struggling with writing but is involved in drama? Perhaps steer him or her towards one of the speeches. Those could be very engaging for kids, but there's more to it. Look at the last column too. These are related. If constructed like this, students can work in groups, where each role is represented once, for brainstorming and discussion, but still write their own final product. Students benefit from hearing how other writers plan to approach their topics, but each student is responsible for their own unique take on it, just like real life. An assignment like this doesn't need to be onerous. Let's switch gears for a moment and look at a sample RAFT from a science class. Here is a simple rubric. And here are the prompts students could choose from. And here's a written response to Newton's RAFT prompt. In case you can't read the handwriting on the screen, the student wrote, "Dear Heavy Rock, I'm very sorry that there was no true winner in the big race at the Tower of Pisa, but I suppose it's always good to know that a heavy rock and a little cherry will fall at the same rate. If you would like to try again, I'm willing to participate, but I highly doubt the results will come out differently. The reason I doubt this is because gravity pulls everything down with the same amount of force. Sincerely, Little Cherry." Let's look at the rubric again. Is the writing accurate and correct? Yep. Is the information thorough and complete? Maybe a date. Aside from that, looks good. Is it presented in an interesting manner? Yep. And most importantly, do you think the student will remember Newton after handing the assignment in and walking out of class? Of course they will. Using a simple rubric can save time and make assignments crystal clear for students too. When writing rubrics, a quick search on the internet will provide you with ample examples of RAFT assignments and rubrics. Remember though, content area teachers aren't assessing writing quality. You are teaching your content area. However, if a student's grammar, mechanics, or structure are so bad that you're unable to read the text, wait to grade their work. Instead, with a rubric like this, you could circle these and add a note. Please come see me. Ask the student to read their writing out loud to you. This type of on-the-fly formative assessment will give you an excellent idea as to whether you need to collaborate with the student's English teacher, whether there are cognitive challenges at work, or whether there's a fundamental misunderstanding of the content or the assignment. Depending on the data, you may want to give the student one more night to complete the writing, now with clearer instructions, or you might arrange for the student to edit and revise their work with an English teacher who might have some insight into these particular kinds of errors. Or you may discover through the student's embarrassment and apologies that students hadn't proofread their writing, and that was the only problem. At that point, it's up to you. Give her a chance to proofread and improve her writing. Staple both drafts together, newest one on top, and hand in both drafts at the start of the next class. In Part 4, we'll show you how to build your own RAFT. When you build your own RAFT, the structure only requires that the role, audience, format, and topic are defined. Everything else can be tailored to your needs. One way to build your RAFT is to use RAFT as an assessment tool. At that point, students will internalize the essential question for the unit as well as the enduring understanding. Show them the rubric, and then you can build a collaborative RAFT where the students participate in creating the choices, like calling out words at an improvisation show. Have fun, but make sure that your prompts fit the topic, because there will be more than one choice. You have an opportunity to validate all of your students' suggestions, giving an opportunity for vocal participation to students who might otherwise stay silent in class. And if you wind up with an enormous list of roles, you can have students vote on the choices. A simple thumbs up or down will do the trick quickly, and you'll find that students self-police pretty nicely. Students will vote down items that don't fit well, as long as they know what the rubric looks like. Do you need students to focus on one particular topic? RAFT is extremely useful when addressing single topics. Here is a RAFT with a single topic, but students can choose from all the other elements. What if you have a student who is challenged with dysgraphia or an inability to write correctly? This can be a particularly rewarding challenge. Clearly, it requires a level of critical and creative thinking that we don't often get to see. Even something as simple as a complaint letter, where the writer requests compensation or to exchange a product, could be an excellent assessment of process awareness. When asking to exchange a product, at minimum, what does the rubric need? My RAFT proves I understand the information. Information is accurate and correct. Information is thorough and complete. Information is presented in an interesting manner. Identification and a way for the addressee to respond is provided, like a return address. Because of RAFT's flexibility, the activity also provides you with a smooth way to shift responsibility to your students in a non-jarring way. RAFTs make releasing responsibility easy. The first time you engage in the activity, you will model, perhaps with a think aloud, how you will choose your role, audience, format, and topic. Then, as students become more familiar with RAFT activities, you can allow them more flexibility and more say in the elements they may choose from, even possibly having a completely class-developed RAFT. Now it's time to build your own RAFT. Either by yourself or in a group, start by thinking of your next upcoming unit. Start with just the name, then start to imagine the subtopics involved and activities, assessments, and group activities. Once you have that, begin with whichever RAFT element comes most easily to you. It might be audience, it might be topic. Start wherever you're comfortable, or with how many options you offer. For now, focus on getting at least 2 options in each category and get your ideas down on paper. You can refine and add more later. Use the space in your viewing guide to draft a RAFT. Please pause the video for a moment and write down your answers to the questions in your viewing guide. Press play when you're ready to resume. Welcome back. Thank you for sketching out some ideas for a possible RAFT assignment. Be sure to poll your students before you teach the RAFT activity. Some of your classes may have already done RAFTs in another class. You don't want to bore them with repeated instruction and modeling if they already know how to proceed. And please remember, the RAFT is flexible. There are multiple right ways to conduct a RAFT. As long as there is a choice, a rubric, and time, you can have a RAFT. Students can work individually, in pairs, or in groups as seen here. You can even punt with it. If your class works quickly and you realize you have 15 unplanned 4 minutes, try a spur-of-the-moment raft. Have students suggest a limited number of choices, then get those kids writing. Who knows what fantastic things you'll get back that can be used for formative assessment or rough draft fodder for an assignment later in the unit. Years ago, when writing across the curriculum first began, content area teachers were challenged to start grading writing. If you are a content area teacher, you know when spelling, grammar, and mechanics get in the way of understanding. That's something that can appear on your RAFT rubric. The rubric you see here might be overwhelming, but teaming up with an ELA teacher, presenting a unified front to students can be a powerful tool. They won't be able to argue, but I don't have to use correct punctuation in my history class. Why are you making me do it in this class? When students see that all their teachers expect all writing to be presented at a particular level of mastery, they'll quickly align their writing methods between classes. Sure, but for you it means that students know they can ask any teacher and are encouraged to ask questions like, "You marked me down on this? I don't think I know how I'm supposed to be punctuating lab reports. Can you show me?" You can always refine and add more later. Use the space in your viewing guide to draft your new RAFT and answer the following questions. Within your content area, which 3 units will benefit the most from the RAFT strategies? How will the RAFT strategies improve reading, writing, and your content knowledge? Which RAFT category most enhances your approach to teaching different content? Please pause the video for a moment and write down your answers to the questions in your viewing guide. Press play when you're ready to resume. In Part 5, we'll launch our RAFT. Our mission today was to get you excited about using RAFT as a writing or reading strategy in your classroom. It's a great tool in the fight against busy work, as well as the war against stacks of grading. When implemented, RAFT can be used to create lessons on the fly, plan and construct lessons with students, differentiate the mode of response while still maintaining a rigorous expectation of content mastery, produce nuanced output from high-ability learners, offer real-world options to special needs learners, expand the growing language skills of ELL learners, celebrate all of the creative voices you have in your classes, and, if that weren't enough to convince you, it fits the standards. Thank you so much for your time today. We truly appreciate all of your hard work and dedication to your students. That brings us to the end of our webinar. Please take a moment to fill out our brief survey by visiting the link provided. Thank you for learning with us today. We here at the Nebraska Department of Education truly appreciate your hard work and dedication to your students.